Thanks for being here. Welcome, everyone. I'm Adela Ramos from the Tacoma Tree Foundation, and I'm very excited to be hosting this Lunch and Learn Rooted Urban Forestry and Focus with Lisa Kenny, our esteemed Urban Forestry Program partner, and Jayla Smith, my esteemed coworker at the foundation. Before we start, we just would like to thank Tacoma Creates, which actually makes these events possible and free, in addition to planting free trees and reducing barriers for Tacomans to have access to green spaces. We also are committed to offering free educational events, and thanks to Tacoma Creates, we are able to do so. Before we jump into introducing our presenters, I'd like to just go over some tech matters. The chat is disabled, but as the presentation flows, you can pose your questions on the Q&A, and we'll do our best to answer them at the end. This is a pretty rich presentation, partly because we really are eager to share a lot of information with you and a lot of resources that we've been getting questions about online, over email, on social media. So our time for the Q&A might be a little bit reduced, and if that's the case, we will be answering questions via email after the presentation. But please, your questions matter to us. That's one of the reasons why we're doing this in the first place. The chat is closed to participants, just I think I already said that, but so all of your questions should go in the Q&A. And then tech issues haven't really been an issue for us on these webinars, but they happen. So if anything does happen, just bear with us, and we'll do everything in our power to resolve it quickly. Okay, and so now for the exciting part. I'm going to start by introducing Lisa Kenny. Lisa Kenny is a Community Trees Program Coordinator for the City of Tacoma's Urban Forestry Program. Lisa was proudly born in the Philippines, raised in Chicago, and has been living in the Pacific Northwest for 8 years. She is a certified ISA arborist and is a passionate Community Trees Program Coordinator for the City of Tacoma. With expertise in urban forestry and a background in conservation, habitat restoration, community engagement, and even mushroom cultivation, Lisa brings a wealth of experience to her role. She co-manages the city's plant holding facility, leads initiatives, and supports partnerships to expand Tacoma's canopy while fostering community connections. Lisa's tree hero is the Wangari Maatai. And Lisa will be joined by Jayla Smith, she planting coordinator for the Tacoma Tree Foundation, because one of the things we really want to highlight is that this work is collaborative work and it requires all of us to come together and do the work. Jayla was born and raised in Tacoma and has spent their adult life serving as an educator, social worker, artist, and community organizer throughout the Puget Sound area. Jayla invests in Tacoma's grassroots organizing networks that address the devastating effects of systemic racism and supremacy, from the housing crisis to food insecurity to environmental justice. Jayla believes that everyone knows how to cultivate safe and healthy spaces for their community to grow, play, and love, and that we all have the right to do so. So I'm very, very happy to be here with both of them today. I'm going to stop sharing and let them get on with the business of educating us. Thank you so much, Lisa and Jayla, for being here.
Hey, everyone. Thanks again for joining us this afternoon to dip your toes into the tree world. I'm hoping that with this presentation, you understand a little bit more about what tree canopy cover is and some approaches we're taking to reach our canopy goals. So hope it sparks some curiosities and inspiration to get involved in some of this work. Before we dive in, I just want to take a moment to pause and acknowledge that the urban forestry work that we do is on the ancestral lands of the Puyallup tribe. My hope for this land acknowledgement is to honor and pay respects to the Puyallup people, both past and present, who tend to and care for this land since time immemorial. In the state of Washington, there are about 29 tribes who are federally recognized. And while this map shows kind of the geographic spread of reservations, this map shows a bit of a different perspective. Really, that native land is really all around us. And though land acknowledgements are new or recent to some, they're actually a long-standing Indigenous practice where there's recognition and respect for the people that tend to the land and also the land itself that provides. And let's see, I also think that land acknowledgements for non-native folks is an opportunity to examine what your relationship to the land is. Think about how you support Indigenous sovereignty here and abroad, and just to commit to be a steward of the land, which I think that idea ties in really well to our urban forestry topic today. So today we're going to talk about urban forest benefits and connections to other fields. We'll look at the state of our urban forests. It'll get a little bit dark there, but then it'll brighten up as we talk about some of our management frameworks and programs. We'll talk about upcoming projects or ways to tap in. And then there's a couple slides at the end of resources, things we get commonly asked. So let's just dive in by talking about what an urban forest even is. So generally speaking, I like to think about urban forestry as kind of two parts. It's two words. And so the urban part of the word is based on a definition that's related to population density. So it's about 1,000 people per square mile is what urban is. And so 80% of our US population lives in these urban areas. And so when you combine that word with forests, urban forests, that includes all the natural and planted vegetation within that urban area, within that city. So that's trees along streets and parks, our open spaces, our backyards, and community gardens. So all that compromises our urban forests. And you might, maybe you don't ask this, but maybe some people ask, like, why does urban forestry, why do trees in cities matter if we have big, beautiful stands of forest outside the city? And so hopefully the next slide isn't that surprising, but trees are straight up good. So the Nature Conservancy has put together this publication called Outside Our Doors. And essentially it synthesizes over 40 years of research that concludes that trees are just good. It's really that simple. The bullet points you see are some of just the many benefits that come from healthy urban forests. I won't dive into each point too specifically, but there's some slides coming up that I'll dive into, but just keep in mind these three things as we go on. Trees are good. More healthy trees are even better. And bigger, healthy trees are the best. One benefit I really like to stress, and especially in the Pacific Northwest, is where it rains a lot. It's not right now, but in the fall, definitely. The benefit is the stormwater management of trees. So there's a number of ways that trees help to mitigate our stormwater. So when it rains, the canopy of trees intercepts the rain, physically slowing it down. And that's a huge thing, because during high peak rain events where there's a surge of water entering our stormwater systems, that the slowing down of rain helps water actually infiltrate and become absorbed instead of quickly running off into our stormwater system. The canopy also prevents the direct contact or the harsh impact of the rain onto bare surfaces. And then the tree roots also hold soil in place. So both those things help to prevent erosion as well. And trees, they help actually capture the rainfall by taking it up, using it as a resource and filtering pollutants. And so that's a synthesis of stormwater management, but I wanted to, with this next slide, put some numbers to stormwater management. And so I picked two trees that folks likely know, they're all around, and one is evergreen and one is deciduous. So one stays green all year round and one loses trees and for the most part goes dormant. And I plugged them into this platform called iTree that calculates all kinds of tree benefits, including stormwater. And something to note here on the chart is that even really young trees that are 5 years old have quite a significant stormwater impact, taking up to 123 to 190 gallons of water. And there's some other references in there to kind of help you to visualize how much water that actually is. 6 bathtubs full or 12 kegs of water is a 5-year-old tree's benefit, stormwater benefit. And the older the tree gets, they contribute to even more stormwater benefits. And so I also want to highlight with our evergreen trees, they're a bit longer lived. And so that impact continues to amplify. So that's huge. Look at that. An old Douglas fir tree. That is a crazy amount of kegs full of water. So give it up for those trees. We also know that people living closest to trees receive the most benefits of having them around. So the same is true for physical and mental health. Trees and green spaces positively impact childhood development and learning, like things like improved test scores or increasing in attention span. Something cool about trees is they actually have been shown to enhance like our own human immune function, which really builds resilience to things like cardiovascular disease and depression and more. And there's this one study that I'm referencing things that are stated in the Outside Our Doors publication. There's one study in there that I think is so interesting. They studied patients post-op in hospital settings. And they found that patients that had rooms overlooking nature recovered faster, so that they required shorter hospital stays. And they even required less pain medication than those that had non-nature views or views of like brick walls. So that was just mind-boggling to me. Another public health benefit, especially during this time of year, is mitigating our urban heat. So creating shade. Tree canopied areas in the city can be up to 15 degrees cooler than other parts of the city that have no or low tree canopy cover. And that's a pretty significant temperature difference. More green spaces and more trees contribute to stronger, more connected communities. So there's another study in that publication that looked at trees in relation to public housing. And it showed that where there were more trees and more green infrastructure, there were 56% fewer violent crimes in those areas. More trees also bring about like a traffic calming effect. A lot of people participate in our programs actually cite this need. Hey, there's a lot of fast cars on my block. Like, can I get some trees to help slow folks down in my neighborhood? And because trees have this traffic calming effect, this one study actually showed that it reduced crashes by almost half. And therefore, less crashes means less pedestrian fatalities. So that's a pretty big benefit. And one that I don't really have a stat for is, trees really play a huge role in connecting people to our surroundings, a sense of place, and also with one another, sharing tree stories. All this contributes to community cohesion, which is priceless. So that's not on this slide, but it's priceless. Okay, that was my very quick fire urban forestry benefits. There's so many more, but now you all are experts in what some tree benefits are. Now we're going to explore kind of the state of our urban forests within the region and then specifically in Tacoma. But before we do that, I just want to define tree canopy a little bit because we're going to talk about it a lot. And tree canopy is essentially if you were to look down onto an urban area, it would be the land area that's covered by the tree crown. So the branches, the leaves, and it's just that contiguous canopy. So we don't double count any canopy that's like overlapping. Can you see my mouse on the slide? Oh, okay. Well, I don't know how to fix that, but we'll just keep going. On the slide, I just want you guys to remember this percentage, that the average tree canopy cover for urban areas in the US is 35%. Keep that tucked away. And I do also like to mention this study. It was conducted by American Forests that essentially measured the decline of our forests, the Pacific Northwest forests, over a 24-year period from the 70s to the 90s. And yeah, they found that trees were declining at a rapid rate. High tree canopy covered areas declined by 37%, and low tree canopy areas doubled to 57%. And all these losses have many impacts. One thing that I'll just continue to stress is that stormwater impact. So the loss of this meant that stormwater flow during peak events increased by 29%. And you might be like, Lisa, these are way too many percentages. I don't even know what that means. Well, that means that 1.2 billion cubic feet of water is now entering the Puget Sound unfiltered. And then you might also follow up and say, I don't know what cubic feet, what does that mean? Imagine one full bathtub full of water. Now imagine 180 million bathtubs full of water. That is generally what equivalent to 1.2 billion cubic feet of water entering the Puget Sound. So it's a huge loss and impact. And the reason why I share this kind of sad study is because when it came out, it was essentially the catalyst to getting our local municipalities in the Pacific Northwest to start intentionally thinking about and creating urban forest management plans, which is huge because we need plans in order to get anywhere. Okay. This is my least favorite slide, but I have to tell you all that Tacoma has the lowest assessed tree canopy cover of the entire Puget Sound region. So we're all the way here at the bottom at 20%. And I don't know if you all can come up unmuted, but I just reminding you that I told you to remember a percentage earlier. The average tree canopy in the US is in urban areas is 35%. So we've got some work to do. You'll also see kind of in this map that tree canopy is distributed pretty unevenly throughout Tacoma, which is concerning. And I just want to emphasize kind of the link between urban heat and human health and how trees obviously have a direct impact on that. So here are maps. I don't know if you're map people, maybe some of you are. If you're tree people, there's kind of a correlation between trees and data. But anyway, the maps from left to right show urban heat, our tree canopy, and our equity index. And actually plotted on those maps are 8 heat-related deaths that occurred in Tacoma in 2021. And we can see that they're occurring in majority low tree canopied census blocks or low equity census blocks. And so something that we understand at the city is that past racist policies like redlining are still having a direct impact in our communities today, where, you know, these formerly redlined neighborhoods that have fewer trees are some of the hottest places now in the city. We also understand that people that are living in these low tree canopied, low equity areas might also have fewer resources to buffer themselves from heat during these high heat events. It's all to say that access to nature, access to trees is a pretty big public health issue. And so what are we going to do about it? I know flying through this, there's a lot of information here, but I'm just going to keep going because that's what we're going to do. Now we're going to talk about management and policy, some kind of frameworks for management. We'll talk about our tree canopy goal, which is to get to 30% tree canopy cover by 2030. We're going to talk about what's it going to take and who does it take? And the answer is a lot, but I'll dive into it. I'm not gonna kind of go into this too much, but I just wanted to note that we've had policies in place that support the growth of our urban forests since 2010. And some policy changes have been pretty slow going, like the new tree code, which was updated within the last year. And this tree code was updated the last time it had been, well, when it was created was in the 1927. So it was almost 100-year old tree code, and that was just recently updated, which is a huge step. When we talk about translating like policies into actual actions, there's really kind of these three pillars that we talk about in terms of what is sustainable urban forestry management. And so you need to have effective urban forest management, right? We need assessment tools and regulations and enforcement and protections in place in order to manage anything. Down here, proactive tree care. We need proactive tree care because if we don't protect what we already have, we can never really plant enough trees to keep up with that type of loss. And stewardship and engagement, I mean, that's a pretty critical piece. I kind of deal with the first three-ish bullets and then some other bullets in the other kind of tiers over here. But it's especially important to engage community because, you know, when we think about where we are going to plant these trees, not everyone knows that the city only owns about less than 6% of like the land area in Tacoma. And so when we talk about how are we going to get to this goal, we're not going to get there by planting a ton of trees just on city-owned properties. We're not going to get very far. When we created our urban forest management plan, our consultants actually helped us determine that 26% of the city's land area is public right-of-way. But that area only has 9% tree canopy cover. And so that's why a lot of our tree-related programming is kind of geared towards right-of-way tree planting. This slide I thought was a little funny because I thought we could use a little laugh at this point, but you might ask yourself, okay, like which one of these is most important and who leads? Like who's up first? And really the answer is all of these pieces are equally as important because they each have to operate in unison in order for any one of them to be effective. And when we think about like, who's going to lead us? Who's in charge? Is it the city? Us? No, we can't do it all. And we shouldn't, I don't think, because when we work together with our community partners and with you, we can really, just elevate our own particular strengths and just have a deeper impact together and get a little bit further in order to make all this possible. So we keep talking, okay, 30% tree canopy cover. What the heck I don't even know what that looks like. What do I have to compare it to? And so I pulled some of these images so that we can kind of have a visual exercise. And so this is kind of the Jenny Reed area around 2011, I think. And so that was a while ago. And we're looking, since you can't see my mouse, we're just looking at the property boundary of Jenny Reed here. So there's that big field, there's some buildings in that parking lot. And we're going to try and guess out loud, or in the chat's disabled, so you can't put it in the chat, but try and think about what percentage of this parcel is covered in trees. We can see some trees along the parking lot there. That's great. There's kind of one big tree next to that building. That's good. What percent is this? It's about 5.3% tree canopy cover, which I'll just say, it was a map I showed earlier, but some census blocks have about this much tree canopy cover. So that's just putting a visualization to how little that actually is. Oh, I just put a photo of, it was so long ago when that photo was taken, 2011-ish. This is a more recent photo of the same area. So those trees along that parking lot are still there, which is great. They're a little bit bigger. Some of those bigger trees are even more bigger. And we actually did a tree planting with this school. I can't remember, a couple years ago, but now there are some baby trees along the property as well. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Here's another example. This is Wright Park around the same time. So let's guess again in your brain. What does this look like? Almost half, 49%. So from 5% to 50, this is tree canopy cover on the ground. Okay, and when we talk about the trees that we do plant to reach this goal of 30% tree canopy cover, in the limited available planting space that we have, well, it has to be strategic. This slide kind of shows that if we were to plant something like a flowering pear tree, which is a pretty small tree, we would have to plant almost 2 million flowering pear trees in Tacoma in order to reach our tree canopy goals. I don't know if you all know what a flowering pear looks like or what it smells, but we do not want that. We do not want that. If you look at a different tree species like the red oak that has a much bigger tree canopy impact, it gets about 50 feet tall and 45 feet wide, we would only have to plant 120,000 trees, which is 16 times less than the flowering pear. And that's something that we like to call like right tree, right place. If we have space for a bigger tree, let's plant it, because that means we don't have a blank check, unfortunately, to do our programs. And so we have to be strategic about the space that we have and the types of trees that we offer. Let's see. This, I think I just wanted to say that planting trees anywhere is going to be great and contribute to our goal. But we have to also remember that from an earlier slide, tree canopy cover is distributed unequally throughout Tacoma. And so we have to be strategic about, again, like where we're planting. And this is a tool called our tree planting prioritization tool. And it takes the same data from an earlier slide that I showed you, heat, canopy, and equity, and combines it with actually available planting space. And it generates a planting priority score for each census block. And so it helps us identify where tree planting would have the biggest impact on multiple levels. And you'll notice that some areas are shaded as low or very low tree planting priority, which I think is okay. And I just like to remind folks that, hey, like tree planting might not be a priority in a census block that has existing mature tree canopy cover. And the priority in those census blocks might actually just be tree protection and preservation and maintenance, not necessarily tree planting. So it takes kind of all those strategies to get to our goal. Okay, I thought that this was gonna go, I think I'm doing pretty well with time, but we're gonna talk about some programs and projects for people to plug into now. And again, like I mentioned before, a lot of our programming is geared towards right-of-way tree planting. And a question we often get asked is, well, what is the right-of-way? Here's like a more legal or technical definition of what the right-of-way is. But you can think of it as people like to think of it as planting strips. But I wanted to take a moment to actually give you some right-of-way examples, because oftentimes people will kind of self-select out of our programs because they think that they don't have right-of-way when they actually do have right-of-way adjacent to their property. So there's this resource online. It's called our Tacoma's Dart Map, and you can click it and you can look up your address. So this is a property parcel near Jenny Reed. And the Dart map, you can click a layer that will outline if you have adjacent right-of-way property next to your property. And you can kind of see that there's a blue line and a pink line outlined here. You can't see my mouse, but hopefully you can see it. What's cool about the Dart map is it also has a measuring tool. So you can actually measure measure your right-of-way, which is important because we only recommend tree planting in the right-of-way if you have a right-of-way that's 4 feet or wider. So anything less than 4 feet wide, like from the street to a sidewalk or to the edge of your property, that's the kind of least amount of space we recommend planting with. So for this property, you could actually see that they have a planting strip, so they would probably assume correctly that that's right of way. But then you can see that the right of way actually extends 12 feet on the other side of the sidewalk. So through our programs, you could actually plant trees in the right of way and on the other side of the sidewalk here. Here's another example near Tacoma Tree Foundation's headquarters. If you were this property kind of by this where this parking lot is, where all the cars are, as you walk down 6, you might think, wow, there's no right-of-way or planting strip here. I would probably not be able to participate. But if you pulled up this dart map, you could see that the right-of-way still extends on the other side of the sidewalk about, 14 feet. So that's still a significant area to potentially plant through the help of one of our programs, which I'll talk about now. One program that's going to open up next week is our city program called Grit City Trees. And we provide free trees, stakes, ties, watering bags, soil amendments, all for free for people that apply and go through the application process. The timeline is applications are open until the first 2 days of September. In September, the urban forestry staff, aka me, will review all the applications. We'll notify folks if they are approved. Again, just going through right tree, right place, kind of, and tree placement standards, and then our available inventory. We'll notify folks that if they get approved and what trees and species that they get approved for. We'll deliver trees. If you're in a neighborhood group, if you apply as a neighborhood group, which we recommend because it's way more fun to plant trees with your neighbors than it is yourself, though we also encourage individual applications. October, November is when we'll deliver trees for you. And then May will come back around and give you a watering bag or a bucket, whatever you requested on your application. And this program has been around since 2016. And we've distributed over 1,800 trees throughout Tacoma. This is kind of a time lapse of the impact of Grit City Trees. And something that and it's great. 1,800 trees is a lot, right? 60% of those trees were distributed to those priority neighborhoods that have low equity, low tree canopy cover. But you'll see in the kind of the red areas, kind of the lowest tree canopied, lower equity areas, there's still not very many dots or trees that we've been able to reach through this program. And we learned through community surveys and just conversations with folks that people are experiencing more barriers to participate in programs like this, aside from just sourcing the materials. And so the city needed to respond to that community need. And so enter our new program, the Community Tree Program. City Council passed funds to establish this program in 2022. And we partnered with Tacoma Tree Foundation last year to kind of kick it off. And it's great because its intent is to, again, reduce barriers to programming. And programming kind of, we started to think about it as going beyond just tree planting, though that's included too. There's also education outreach components to the community tree program, and training as well. This just says, this gives you a little spiel on like who the community tree program team is. So it's a partnership, like I said, between the city and Tacoma Tree Foundation. And we have different strengths, and we lean into those strengths in order to be more effective and have a deeper impact. And I will give it to Jayla for the next couple slides.
Awesome. Thank you, Lisa. Oh my gosh, so much information, so much to think about, and so many exciting things that we're doing with the community tree program. So partnerships with the city, but then also partnerships with the rest of the people in our community, whether that be our parks department or churches or individual residents, are so important to the impact that we're making in our city via trees, um, because we're able to reach a broader community, right? Just like Lisa's slide before, this last slide shows that the city has a lot of infrastructure, there's technical training, there's a lot of policy, which is really like that triangle that Lisa was showing us, really able to tackle those things. Whereas the Tacoma Tree Foundation has a lot of flexibility around providing things like this webinar right now. Engaging community members in learning and thinking about trees in their community, thinking about how they engage with their parks or their right-of-ways. We do lots of walks, neighborhood walks, bilingual walks, and reaching further into our community than the city could or any of us could do individually as one organization. So our partnerships are really, really important to the Tacoma Tree Foundation. And it's just one way that we can benefit the community. Thinking about everything that it takes to get a tree in the ground, you were thinking about the land, we're thinking about the types of trees that we're planting, how do we get those trees there, and the labor of getting the trees in the ground, thinking about our water, thinking about the languages that we need, different languages in order to access our different communities. So our partnership with the city and broader is so important for the benefit of our trees and our community. Reaching that 26% right of way is huge. So yeah, we're really grateful for that. This is all the amazing things that we got to do last year. 515 trees distributed. Hey, we got those trees out. And we couldn't have done it without our volunteers, some of them being young people, which is really exciting. We're seeing more and more people engaging the young people in their families and in their communities, whether that be their immediate family or Boy Scouts or whatever it may be, school groups. So we're so thrilled and so grateful for all of our volunteers. At one of our events, we saw like a carpenters union come and show up with their entire family. So it is a really diverse group of people who come out and have a big tree planting party with us. So you can see those numbers that collectively, oh, go back, Lisa.
Oh, sorry.
You can see collectively that we had almost 400 hours just our volunteers contributed, which is amazing. We calculated once those trees are mature, we added almost 5 acres of tree canopy. And like you said, the 86% of trees were distributed in our neighborhood, focused neighborhoods. And like we were saying earlier, lots of community outreach events, lots of different, we're at farmers markets, we're at different events like that. So we got to hit 13 of those last year and engage with over 200 households. Super fun. And yeah, hit it, Lisa. We can plug this year and all the amazing ways that you can engage in our program. So we'll have our tree stewards training September 21st. And that's just a way to go deeper into kind of what Lisa was talking about, more specifically around how we care for trees, way more specifically into analyzing utilities and things like that. So we definitely invite you to come to the tree stewards training on the 21st. That registration will be live coming soon. And then we also have our tree captains who really support our huge tree planting events. We train you on how to engage with residents. We train you on how to lead a small group of volunteers in planting trees. So we'll get that going in August. You'll get to meet our other tree captains, and they're just a great passionate community of folks. And then we have our Green Tacoma Day is in October. That will be a tree share and hopefully tree planting as well. So stay tuned for that. The picture behind this list is us at last year wearing our hot pink shirts, and we got to plant a bunch of trees in McKinley. We had a great time. And then we'll be coming to Lincoln in October, which we're really excited about. You can hit our website and see where those Lincoln boundaries are, but we'll be bringing trees to the neighborhood of Lincoln in October. And then Branch Out will be centered at our Eastside Community Center, but we'll be bringing trees out to all over Tacoma and prioritizing those focus neighborhoods. But that's an opportunity to request trees, but also engage with us and plant trees with us. We'll get a technical workshop in, hopefully hands-on technical workshop. And then at the end of the year, we always try and have a big community appreciation where we thank our volunteers and thank the people who let us plant trees in their property and just be in community with us. So there's lots coming up, and that's not even talking about all of our different tree shares and all of our educational opportunities like what we're doing today.
Sweet. All right, now it's time to share some resources to some commonly asked questions we get asked. Yeah, are we going to 45 or all the way to the hour? Just so I know how quick or slow to go.
Well, we already have a couple questions on the Q&A, so if we could maybe go to 48 so that we can have minutes. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. All right, resources. Okay, often we get asked like, hey, I need tree work done. Can you do it? And as a city, we have to say, sorry, it's not a service we provide yet. But in order to find your local kind of tree care company that have certified arborists, which we recommend having certified arborists do any type of tree work, you can go to this website, treesaregood.org. They have this little icon here, find an arborist. You could type in your zip code and how many miles from your zip code you want to search. I would always recommend going a little bit broader, because if the tree care company's headquarters aren't necessarily in your neighborhood, they're like outside of your neighborhood, they still might service your area. So I would search kind of a bigger geographic region. That's one way to find your local arborist. We talked about a couple of kind of programs, just Grit City Trees and the Community Tree Program, but there's so many other kind of community greening programs around. And then depending where you live too, you might have access to like so many more programs. So there's this community greening programs flyer available both on, I know it's on the city website. I believe it's on Tacoma Tree Foundation's website as well. But so it's linked here. You can't click it, but you could just follow this link because I typed it out. Another question we get asked is around like young tree care, because when we give away these trees, they grow up. And after they become established, which is in 3 years, if you're watering it every year, one of the next kind of tree care steps to do after your tree is established is to evaluate it or assess it for any structural pruning needs. And that's, there's a lot of steps that are involved in assessing and evaluating that we can't really effectively explain over an email or over a phone call. And so we just did a webinar on it. So you can check out this webinar to give you more guidelines around what pruning is, what structural pruning is, and how to do it. Another question we get asked is, hey, I want to plant a tree. What tree should I plant? And it really just depends. And there's so many trees that you can plant. If you're looking to plant a tree in the right of way, we have these pre-approved tree lists. So trees that are already approved to be planted in the right of way. And it gives kind of a lot of information on there, what kind of right of way width that you need, how big the tree gets, if it's power line friendly tree. All of that information is on these tree lists. So you can find them on the City of Tacoma's right-of-way tree planting webpage. On that webpage, there's also going to be resources about kind of tree placement guidelines, like how kind of far you need to stay away from things like fire hydrants and sidewalks and utilities. And so that is also available on the same webpage. something exciting that I wanted to share for the first time is our Heritage Tree Program that just came live this year, probably I think like a month or two ago. But our Heritage Tree Program was implemented during the same time our new tree code ordinance got passed. And it's essentially a way for us, for residents of the community, to kind of appreciate the biggest, most interesting, most significant trees by nominating them or designated them as a heritage tree. And so you could go to our website here to nominate a tree of significance. Yeah, but something that I'll say is that you have to have the permission of whoever tree it is. So unfortunately, and I tried to do this, you can't go around and like just nominate all the big trees that aren't yours. You have to like work with whoever owns that tree to actually nominate it. So another thing I wanted to share that I feel like we don't talk about a lot is the Hazardous Tree Assistance Program, which also started in 2023, I believe. And it's kind of this effort to alleviate some of the burden of trees becoming hazardous, because trees in the right of way are, in our code, it's up to the adjacent property owner to manage trees in the right of way. So the city does not take on that care and maintenance of trees. And because of that, people you're not necessarily, pruning and upkeeping trees every 5 years as a homeowner. You probably are not doing that. And because of that maintenance is not kept up, sometimes trees unfortunately become hazardous. And when people historically have called us about that, we have to inform them, hey, this is actually unfortunately on you. This is what our code regulates. And so, but now we can tell people that this program exists. And to qualify for the program, you have to have a tree that is deemed or evaluated as hazardous, so that there's a technical definition as to what a hazardous tree is. The tree has to be on public property, not private property. And you have to be in, you can recall the equity index map I shared earlier. You have to be in a very low or moderate opportunity or equity area to qualify, or you could qualify a different way by being enrolled in one of our TPU assistance programs. And so this program will evaluate your tree, will mitigate the hazard. So that can just be some corrective pruning, or it could sometimes be a complete removal of the tree. And then we will plant a replacement tree. And this is all at no cost to the homeowner. So that's a huge service. And there's a lot more to know about the program. We have a webpage about the Hazardous Tree Assistance Program online. You could check that out. Or you could call the Permit Center or our neighborhood community service team to discuss the program more, because that's how the process kind of starts. So that's hazardous tree assistance. Something cool about kind of a collaboration that came through the hazardous tree assistance is urban wood reuse. And so for some of the trees that had to be taken down, and that I'm not sure the whole process, but some trees we can kind of reuse. So thinking about the next best use of that tree, it's still, it's not a living tree, but we can use it in another way. And so one of the trees that came down were actually turned into park benches and installed in the community. So seeing that next best use was great. This was just like a fun slide for me, but we don't have to talk about it. We can go to questions since we're now at 12:50 if you want.
Thank you so much, both Lisa and Jayla. This was incredible. I think everybody will appreciate the detail with which you've described not just the specifics of tree canopy and what it takes to reach our goal, but also the importance of the partnership and collaboration. So thank you both so much. We have one question that asks if they can send follow-up questions after the presentation, and that absolutely you can do that. Why don't you just share them to info@tacomatreefoundation.org, and then I'll make sure to get them to either Jayla or Lisa, whoever they apply to. But we still have a few minutes, so if you have questions you want to ask now, you can definitely put them on the Q&A and we'll get to them. And in the meantime, I'll read out this question that's very specific about the heritage program. It asks, can heritage trees be on private property? And I think you partially started to answer that question. And then, do they need to be highly visible? What about a tree that is only visible in the alley?
I think that heritage trees have to be on public property. So as long as it's like, if it's in a public right of way, for example, the alley is within the public right of way, it's a public tree. So I think that would qualify. But you can send specific tree heritage questions to, and any tree related question, to trees@cityoftacoma.org. That's kind of our team email that I monitor, and I can get that question just completely clarified by the person that manages that program.
And then we have a question about whether we do presentations at neighborhood councils.
I'll say that our urban forestry team can certainly do presentations at neighborhood council meetings for sure. Yep. Just you can email me directly, lkenny@cityoftacoma.org, or that trees email account. We can get something set up.
Great. Yeah, and the Tree Foundation can also do that. And we could even partner in a presentation if we're a council, specific council. Great. So do you want to go back to your other slide, Lisa, since we're done?
The other slide, sorry, I didn't mean to be so sad about it, but it's just like, I don't know, as I'm an observer, and like when things are kind of stand out, I like to, I don't know, ask questions. And so something I learned recently, a couple years ago, is that that I wanted to share with the group is, so these are dogwoods, right? The people, we get requests to give them away frequently, but we don't often have them. And a lot of times people think that these white leaves are actually their flowers, but they're actually not. They're actually specialized leaves. And the flowers kind of, you can't see my mouse where I'm pointing, but kind of at the center of that specialized leaf. I was like, wow, that's so cool. And then another cool thing I learned recently is horse chestnuts have this smart like co-evolution situation happening with pollinators, where you'll see this photo I took in Wright Park where one flower is kind of has yellow on it and then the other one is pink. And so one flower is actually pollinated, and it changes its color so that the pollinators actually can't see the flower that's pollinated, so that they go to the unpollinated flower and pollinate it. It's great. It's wild. And then this last kind of bit here is my homage to mycology, which is, trees have these mycorrhizal kind of associations with one another that they use to communicate with one another and share resources. They'll share legit resources to keep one another alive. They can warn one another when like there's a pest around, to like, there's a pest coming, ramp up your storage. I don't know what they say to each other, but like they communicate with one another. And it's just so cool. We're all connected. And that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you so much, Lisa and Jayla. I'm going to just share a couple to conclude events that are coming up